I want to welcome you to our workshop on dialogue and democracy. And I want to give you a short outline about the major topics we want to discuss today. First, we start, after our introduction, we start with the dialogue. What is a dialogue? And there, your opinion is important. What is your conception of what a dialogue is? And then we continue on the relation with dialogue and democracy, how they relate today. So we have the Greek original conception about the relation between the polis, the community of citizens, democracy and dialogue, and we have the recent, let's say, problematics about true dialogue and democracy. Because we take a democracy, at least in the West, we take a democracy for granted as a it's like the air we breathe, at least in the West. It's a common good, more or less. It is ensured by a legal framework and so on and so on. Despite right-wing movements and other dangers threatening a democracy also in the Western realm. But for now, for long years, it has been treated as as a common good. No? We do not take care, we do not have to really consider and to really take care about threatenings for democracy. And this is not true. Democracy is not a common good, and democracy is not self-evident. The next point is the major topic is what is the relation between democracy, community, and dialogue today? And after that, we will look in the afternoon. After that, we will look at the threats to democracy, how democracy is threatened. And these are not only political threats, as are not only threats which are overtly visible in political terms, also other ones. And we conclude what the dialogue can do, a true dialogue can do to overcome the threats. And after that, as a final point, we go to the aspect why true dialogue needs real communities. We want to establish a link, this original link existing at the beginning of the concept of democracy between community slash polis, a real dialogue and democracy. This is an often overseen link. And then we go on to a related point. We called it Polis Revisited. How to establish real communities in recent conditions. As if we want to have a true dialogue, to have a community, and then the point is how we can make real communities or true communities, deserving the name, in the recent conditions of a neoliberal agenda dictating our everyday lives, of threats going on, also mental threats as regards mindset, of political threats, and so on. And this is our conclusion. Before, at the end of our workshop, we will summarize the findings then. Very short. So this is the program, and it depends on you. So how we proceed and which aspects will be tackled in more detail and not. No? At the beginning of each of these topics, I will give a short overview. So what are the detailed points per topic we, at least making the program here at Ideal Spaces and at Pechmann, we at least thought could be important. But these are not the only points. If you have some additional common points from your side, please add. No? Okay, and then please, Pechmann.
Yeah, hello to everyone. I would like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Pejman Golchin. I'm a student of PhD of TU Darmstadt, University of TU Darmstadt. And I was a student of PhD in Iran, and my proposal many times rejected, and I follow it again in TU Darmstadt, and I hope finished it. And I wrote a book about ancient Greeks conflicts. What's the battle between the mythos and logos that happened in the history, in the ancient Greek history, and in Persian. And that's it. And I'm here to start a style of dialogue with each other, and between of it, explain the meaning of the dialogue, playing and explaining, both of them working to each other, and hopefully we will be able to share the concept that we would like to explain it. And for the first time, I would like to start from the meaning that came from ancient Greeks concept, eudaimonia. When we would like to explain the meaning of many concepts that happened around us. Firstly, we will ask it ourselves that what's our overall life satisfaction? It's a very important question when we would like to do something. Normally and usually, I ask myself, what's my satisfaction? What's my life satisfaction? And this is my favorite thing or not. I would like to do this or not. And the eudaimonia, this word came from ancient Greek. That means uh, a little bit the definition is happiness, but it's not happiness. It's more than happiness. It's the target. It's the end of anything that happened in the city, and all of the people who are living in the city, they divided to many needs, many targets, many plans, many decisions, and all of them how they are working to each other to find the happiness, whole of happiness that happened for the city, and you will see in the politics and in the modern age. And most of words that we will use in our conversation that came from ancient Greeks is not normally is related to the ancient age. It's important for us to explain and redefine them now for today's lifestyle, and to explain them clearly more than the ancient Greeks people that they used it, because we are living in a modern age and we are using a technology, and many concepts appear for after this 2000 or more than 2000 years, and now we need redefine them more than the Renaissance age, more than the 100 years ago, and many times ago. And then uh, when we would like to explain these words, um, it's a very important assumption for us that we are not ancient people. We are living now. And then, eudaimonia, it was a target of our lifestyle that we will follow it, and that's it. And the situation of eudaimonia is inside the polis, and I will explain step by step all of them, but I will use the words um, very briefly to explain the whole of the concept, and step by step I divided the concepts and I will explain again. Okay, eudaimonia is a target of the polis. Polis is part of the physis, and if you think, if imagine all of the nature is a kind of a whole, a unity nature, a unity, a pack of unit that uh, consists of multiplicity and plurality. If you imagine about a unity that divided to these parts, many parts, and physis is like this, and physis has a nomos, that the nomos follow the harmonia inside the physis and check everything inside the physis, and this physis works as a big mechanism. And this concept will follow to the target. The target is eudaimonia. Eudaimonia of city, eudaimonia happiness. You can use this word happiness. Not, as I explained more before, the meaning of the eudaimonia is more than the happiness, but you can imagine the happiness. Go to the target, go to the eudaimonia, all of the parts of the physis, and as this kind of definition. A unit consisted of multiplicity and plurality. So important parts of the concept of this word. And when we are thinking about nature, normally we think about the nature as a resource, but we wouldn't like think about the nature like this. We would redefine the meaning of the nature as a physis, because if we think about the physis as this kind of the mechanism, when we back to our city, then when we back to our lifestyle, our anything that is related to our privacy, our programming, we think like this. We are a member of a unity, and a unity is for mine. And this system works like this, and you can find a relationship between the methodology and the concept. And then it's our start point that when we want to explain the meaning of physis, we would like to explain the meaning of the eudaimonia, why we would like to have what's satisfied us, and that's it. And for this reason, I will go to the next step for explanation of the dialogue, because if we will explain the meaning of the dialogue can help us to explain better the meaning of the polis, because the roots of the polis came from to many sides, many point of views, and we will try to explain all of these aspects. And then we will be able to appear to explain the many sides and many aspects of this one thing. Then we will be able to explain the correct concept of the polis, or maybe useful concept of the polis. Then I will start from the dialogue parts of this workshop.
May I make a short comment on this?
Yeah.
Okay. To translate it into today, it's very important. It's like in etymology. An architect said, architecture without etymology is not understandable. and these concepts of democracy he outlined in their context of physis, of polis. These are Western concepts, which does not mean that they stay confined to the West. This is another issue. But from the very roots of understanding, these are Western concepts. And what means physis, what Pechman said, physis is about diversity. And physis is a power that unfolds out of itself. It does not need an external force to unfold. For instance, like the spontaneous social organization of people, this is a kind of physis. And this is one point. And the other point is as regards polis. If we define polis in a wider sense, also adapted for today, and say the polis is, its epitome is a city, okay. But polis is more than a city. It's a way of life, and this immediately relates to democracy. A way of life is where all the participants in this, however structured community, can co-decide on that community itself. What will happen with the community? What is the future? Which decisions shall we make for the sake of the community, and so on. And this is one important aspect. As a polis is not bound to the city in our today's understanding of urbanity. A polis is a city that also has its surrounding landscape, its nature. The surrounding landscape and of the city and the city, they both have been the polis. And this is this interplay, this harmonious interplay between nature and culture that we lost during the Occidental evolution of ideas and of cities, and because every ideas make realities in the end. And this unity between nature and culture is important also. And this is the most important aspect for now. And by the way, he's a member of the Pen Club Germany, Pechman, and he's in the group of Writers in Exile. And he comes, and this is very interesting for our workshop today. He comes from a totally different planet where democracy is not. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's not at all self-evident. He comes from a fundamentalist regime he has to flee from. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ulish, and for your explanation. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And for dialogue, I back to the ancient Greek again, and I use these words. And dialogue is a very important word for them, and it was a very important tools for their conversation. Dialogue normally is not a conversation; it's not a normal discussion. Dialogue divided to two parts. Um, um, One part is, for example, I want to speak with Ulrich. One part of dialogue is related to myself, and the other part is related to the Ulrich. We have two logos, two point of view, and this logo says, and with S, English S, working without connecting to each other and sharing their information that came from their experiences, their point of view. And dialogos. Dialogos work with each other to share the aspects of the thing that they had one experience about it. For example, it's a cube here, and I see the cube from this side, and Ulrich will see from the other side. And we will share the sides with each other to explain the whole of cube, to explain our point of view, our situation, and the dialogue started. Because we would like to explain to the others that we cannot see the whole of the thing. And I need you to help me, to show me, to explain me that what's your point of view. And then the dialogue started. And it's a very important concept that they understood at that moment and that time. And the dialogue came from a roots that this roots is a rhetoric, as we know. We use this word, rhetoric, as you know, in English is a normal word. But the rhetoric and the rhetorical members of the ancient Greek that they worked in the city and shared their information with the people, they had an ability to teach the style of dialogue. The style of dialogue in rhetoric divided to three parts. When you would like to start a dialogue, for example, me and Ulrich, we should attend to three parts: ethos, logos, and pathos. Pathos is a passion. Ethos came from ethic. Logos, is a logic. And when we start a dialogue, we should attend to these three parts to win the game. The dialogue, it's a battle. And we should to find the situation of the other's passion, the other's pathos or pathos, and we'll show to the audience that you can trust me with my ethos. And then, if this connection will be active, I will share my logos. And this is a connection. I will find your pathos, and I will show to you my ethos, and then the connection will be started, and then I will explain my argument, and you think and you listen to my argument, and the game will be playing. And this is a style of dialogue. And when we return again from the ancient Greek to our modern age, I think if we think about the roots of the dialogue, that we have my logos and you have your logos, and this private logos should be attend to this important thing, that we can see a part of the thing, not the whole of the thing, and we should share our information to each other. And this kind of point of view will be helpful for the peace, for the growing our relationship in the city and support the many virtues that we would like to have them in our lifestyle. And if you would like to explain something,
Yeah, okay, it's very short, very
yeah,
short.
sure, yeah.
Dialogue is not a discussion, and dialogue is not just a talk. No? When I have a dialogue in the way that Peshman explained it, no? The common aim is to find out something in common. He gave this example of the cube. So we are looking at a cube here on the table, and everybody of us, no, in the dialogues is only a certain perspective of the cube, and not a whole cube. No? And we try to find out, okay, how the whole cube could look like. And if we go from cubes to communities and to communication inside communities, the issue becomes really important of dialogue, not just having a talk and not just having a discussion. This is interesting, etymology, you know, so the architecture of mentalities. Discussion is Latin. This is discussio. So I have here my position, my logos, and Peshman has his logos. And then we put our different opinions, our logos away. No? And the aim is to win. No? And to win with all means. Also, I'm not interested in a discussio. I'm not interested to find out something. No? I want to hold my ground, and I want to win with my logos. A dialogue, no, is an issue. We try to find out something in common, and dialogue rests in respect also. So even if Peshman has another opinion, another logos than I have, no, and he can remain at his other logos, and I have to respect this. I first have to understand what his logos is, what Peshman tries to tell for the cube, for instance, which perspective he is seeing. I have to listen first. And then we can communicate with the aim, and this is the major difference to a discussion, to a discussio, with the major aim to find out something in common. In this cube example, how the cube can look like. And this finding out in common presupposes diversity, and presupposes variety. He must have another opinion than I. He must have another perspective than I, and I have to respect this. And this to respect is a neglected virtue today. We are not respecting, we are making discussions in order to win, to impose our position on the others. Not to speak about democratic procedures. In a democracy, we have to respect each other. And this is the second aspect he addressed. Democracy, as in physics, relates on diversity. Diversity, variety, tolerance are very oftenly used ideas today. But if we take them serious, we need different people with different opinion, also with a different logos, also to make up a community, for instance, a polis. And we need to respect them in their difference, and we need to have a dialogue with them in order to find something out in common, practical. In the case of a polis, how we manage the polis. What are the most important issues in the polis for the next time? And these are very important connections, valid until today. Okay.
And this is important thing that we should remember it, the meaning of duxa. If we are living in a duxa situation, duxa, it's a very important word for the ancient Greeks, and you can search about this word. It's because I think it's an important, it is an important assumption for the dialogue. Because the duxa, what's this? If you imagine a line is a mathematical line, is a Descartesian, yeah? We are living between two extreme right and left, not political right and left. Extreme right said we cannot aware of anything, is extreme right. Extreme left said we can aware of everything. And these two sides, it's a two very um, non-correct situation that we had in our experience, refer to the history of knowledge. We tried to find many things in the nature, but we couldn't. But we tried to find many roots of the nature, many origin of the nature, but sometimes we found them. Then you are living between two extreme point of view, awareness and not awareness, pure awareness and not pure awareness. And this is the meaning of duksa. And then, if you believe the duksa, then when you start a dialogue, you are not a pure person that know everything and anything. You are living between of these two extreme situation. And why it belongs to the polis? Was it's important for the polites, the people who are living in the polis. Why? This methodology. It's important. When you ask this question, you should define the meaning of the polis. Polis, the word of polis, came from the word of polu. That's an ancient Greek word. As I explained or I said before, polu and the roots of polis, this means is a unity consisting of multiplicity and plurality. A unit divided to many parts. Do you know fractals? And I can focus on this material in the not just in mathematics, in the nature. We have many fractals, and I think the fractals it's a good example for this concept. And the unity work with the parts, that each part work with the unity. And we have a bird in Persian literature. we say to it simorg. Simorg, it's a one bird. Simorg means 30 birds. And these 30 birds, it's a one bird. And these 30 birds, that is a one bird, divided to 30 birds, that each birds work like itself, without any equality, All of the birds work as itself ability, and maybe it's a very confusing concept to explanation, but a kind of example for the explanation about the polis, about the polu. And when you are living in this situation, you need a connection to the others. You need to find the other side point of view. And then, as we explained, and Ulrich explained it before, when you are living near the others, and when your home and your house connected you to the others in the city, in the polis, you should find the best routing situation and finding the best ways that help you to be satisfied about your plan, your program, and anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is it's a good point. This relates to the satisfaction, what Peshman said in the beginning. The Greek word is without killing you to death here with Greek terms, but it's about roots. It's about ideas and not just about terms. This, if the final aim of living in a polis is eudaimonia, so this means leading a satisfactory life. No? In the best case, it's a lucky life. But at least it must be a life, when I live in a community, an organized community with others, at least it has to be a satisfactory life, minimum.
Exactly.
And not a life under suppression, under poverty, and so on. And if we take this concept of eudaimonia, and also if we take the polis in a wider sense as any kind of organized community, as a polis is not only architecture, architecture, and it is not confined to architecture. There was a famous saying from a Greek philosopher who said, look, people, you are the polis, and not the buildings, and not the stones. You are the polis. It depends on you if we can make a real community or not. And this real community is prerequisite, is mandatory for achieving eudaimonia. So these are the relations. We can only lead a satisfactory life in a way of eudaimonia if we are a real community, if we have a real polis, and this relates to democracy. Democracy literally is as the demos, the people here living in the polis are ruling. Kratein, as a kratein means rule and not, but rule as a way of being. This is one aspect. And the other aspect with this Persian bird and these many different parts, this himorg, this relates to the very idea of plurality and diversity and to the idea of Gestalt. We need to be different citizens, polites, citizens in our polis, in order to make a polis happen at all. If all people would think the same, if all people would behave the same, we cannot make a true polis. It's impossible, because there's lack of diversity. And with lack of diversity, we have no true dialogue. Okay.
It's like a trade, a kind of trade that we can explain it. Yeah, I think in this part we.
Okay. Yeah. Good, and then we can start with the discussion. Also, we finish Greek now. It's all done, all over. But its roots are very important because these roots are valid until today. So we should redefine them for our situation today. What it means for us today, and this would be our first part here. What is your understanding of a dialogue?
And your understanding.
And your understanding, of course. No? Yeah.
I still have a question about the difference between dialogue and discussion. I'm imagining it as you said, like you have three parts of dialogue: the ethos, the pathos, and the logos.
No, the dialogue divided to three parts. Mm-hmm. The process of the dialogue. It's a process.
Okay.
Yeah. The first, okay. I will explain myself, ethos, and that moment, I will check you, okay? What's your pathos? What's your passion? And then, if I will find these two parts, if I will prepare these two parts for myself, and you will do this at that moment too, then the dialogue is started. And a very important assumption for the people who are living inside the dialogue style is both of us, we have this assumption again that you are a part of an event, of the whole of the event, okay? And when I said an example, a cube, when we will see a cube, we will see from that side, and I will see from this side, and we will share our experiences, and then we will think about it, and we will share. And the dialogue started from this point of view and these assumptions. Yeah.
And to go back to your,
like just understand like the difference between a discussion and a dialogue. For me, I imagine like things could happen that, like in the beginning, I think I know your pathos, and so I share like my logos, but maybe in the middle of the dialogue, I realize that your ethos or pathos is a different one than I had assumed in the beginning, and so maybe that changes. And I'm still asking this question in the back, like to define what is a discussion then? Is it when like you take this game to yourself and ignore the other person, or what is a discussion?
Yeah. To make it, it's a good question. To make it bluntly, by their origin, the dialogos, an exchange of different perspectives with the aim of finding something out in common at the end of our meeting here, is a different thing than a discussio. A discussio is, I'm not interested in your pathos. I'm just not interested in it.
Mhm.
I have my position, and I want to push through my position. Take, for instance, TV talks. These are pseudo dialogues. This is important is my own position, and I try to defend and to enlarge my position over the position of the others. Their pathos, the pathos of the others, I give a damn shit on it. And my ethos, my behavior, so ethos means behavioral attitude, use,
Respecting.
respect, many things. As ethos is a certain, like ethics. Anyway, broken down, ethos is my position plus behavior. So how I normally act. For instance, in this negative example, in a TV talk, this is no true talk. It's even not a talk. It's a pure. The ethos is the pure discussio mode. Here we have this position A, we have this position B, and then the positions clash onto each other. There is no interest in finding something out in common. Please.
Sorry. And we can say discussion or discussion is a kind of dialogue. A kind of dialogue.
It's a variant. Okay.
Yeah.
It's too complicated.
Yeah.
It's too complicated. Let's a proposal. It's too and related. I want to come back to the notion to one important notion, the most important one of a dialogue. Your question. The thing is, we want to find something out in common in the end when we are talking to each other. And the modern word is discussion, and this has a meaning of a dialogue. But let's say a dialogue instead of a discussion to keep the ideas clear. An idea is an inner image. This is not just fantasy. And many terms, and therefore these etymological roots and these cultural roots are important. Many ideas form realities, and our perception of reality until today. For instance, we still believe, when speaking about physics and that the planet has to be saved, which is needed today, we still refer to ideals in a positive sense, to utopias, to places that do not exist, literally translated, utopia, to a paradise, to a reunification in the sense of the old polis between we living in architecture, in artifacts, and we nevertheless can reunite with nature. These are hopes, these are ideas as alive inner images. And seen from this background, one premise to come to common terms when we are living together and have to make decisions for our community together is the dialogue. And therefore we wanted to start, what is your conception of a dialogue? What ideas you have about a dialogue?
On a conceptual basis, excuse me, right now we're talking modern society today.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Greece, we talked about the past, that is all fine, but it was based on a limited population.
Mm-hmm.
In this seminar itself, we're dealing with different age groups in present-day society. So the 20 to 30-year-old versus the 30 to 40-year-old versus the 60 to 70-year-old. In your point of view, is dialogue and discussion a variable that is different with all those different age groups in today's population?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's one good
point.
point. And the other good point is we are living not as regards the ethos. We have no common ethos in modern societies. We have many different fragmented societies, but not one community. I think this is a very important point. But what is your opinion on this? What is a dialogue for you?
I mean, if I can say something, I mean, I have to rethink because I feel like it covered quite a lot about this. About this cube that you're looking from different perspectives and lenses. I have to think about this concept because I found it quite interesting. I was attending a conflict management seminar the other day, and within that seminar, all of a sudden, the dialogue flipped in a way that we realized that I realized that as soon as there are behaviors integrated such as discrimination, that there is no dialogue possible. So the mediator who was part of this conflict management seminar, who was leading the seminar, no one could handle the situation once one of the participants was telling about discriminating behavior that happened towards her, and there were no tools that could move this, like, to resolve her conflict. It was with her boss, who was a sexist, and there were no tools to move from, I don't know, like, to resolve this conflict. And I'm quite interested, what happens when you are, I don't know, is it then even a dialogue when you're talking about a cube, but the sides of the cube do not even belong together? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I got it.
This is for me, and I think maybe that ties into what you said. I do not know your name, unfortunately, on the right side from my side. We are so fragmented as a society, and for me, the threat of democracy, this is why I'm sitting here, because I wonder, like, how can I turn something into a dialogue that seems to be impossible to turn into a dialogue in the first place?
And these are the important issues for our today's workshop. We want to speak about today. Very short, to your point, to your example. One premise of a dialogue is openness. I must be willing to lead a dialogue. If I have a position, let's take another example from India, and you correct me, Gurpreet, if I'm utterly wrong. You say, hey, Uli, stop. If we take, let's say, if we take a pseudo-democracy, we have the situation of the conflict seminar on a larger scale. If we take a pseudo-democracy like India, in formal terms, it's a democracy. But in fact, there is no openness to change anything in the direction of a true democracy, means of a true participation of citizens. There is no openness, and as regards your conflict management seminar situation, the premise is openness. I cannot have a dialogue about nothing, cubes, the Polis, whatever, if I'm not open for it.
Yes, I have a comment and maybe a question on that. But my definition of a dialogue is always that we have the baseline of the same view on human rights, for example, because you cannot say I'm open when there is no ground line of we all respect basic human rights and the same understanding that every person has the same value. And I think point. that is the problem with discussions, because you cannot be open to someone who has no value for human rights. So that there is no baseline of a dialogue, and I couldn't have a dialogue with someone who is not respecting that.
This is the good point. The baseline. We need some common ethos, translated into Greek terms. So we need some common pre-understanding and some common ethos and some social behavior, plus the ideas before the social behavior. And these ideas plus behavior, this ethos is the baseline. In your example, if I do not accept human rights, we cannot continue discussing about dialogue and democracy, and that's it. It's finished.
But in this case, we can say that Polis in the Antike was also kind of pseudo-democratic field because
course,
people who worked couldn't participate. So who was talking at the end? It was a really common ground, and that I think it's important to have it in mind. Where do we have a real democracy in view or terms of dialoguing? And for me, the dialogue, the basis of dialogue is also the questioning in contrast to the discussion, because in a dialogue, I have to be open to question myself and my point of view and the other person. And in a discussion, mostly I go in with a fixed point of view. So that's also for me a big difference, that I'm questioning myself like a Socrates method.
Okay, yeah, this is important. Also, your point about Greek polis, no? There have been many different forms of polis, not only democratic ones, first point. And second, of course, it was an antique society, and this means not that all inhabitants of a city were citizens. No? The second point.
Really small group, so maybe the dialogue in finding a common sense or a consensus was much more easier, because there wasn't something to discuss, because there was no opposite or controversial discussion about human rights, for example.
They had no idea about human rights, but they had ideas about respect. And as regards the citizen concept in democratic polis, here all the citizens could participate, and even people coming from outside. For instance, many Greek polis, when they fought wars with the Persians, after some time, even an outsider could become a citizen, and then he was allowed to vote and to have jobs in the city.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they could only participate if they had the luxury to don't work, to choose if they work at time.
As a citizen, you have the right to vote, and you have also the ethos to vote and to take some jobs, some official jobs in the city. This was important. It was not confined to rich people. This is one aspect. The other aspect is the people who made philosophy, of course. You need some time. Also, the Greek word for craftsman is the banausos. And this is the man working with his hands, and he has no time to make a philosophy. He has to work, but he can vote. He can take an official job regularly. This was not confined to rich people, not at all. And this distinction has to be made, because it would be oversimplify the whole concept of the polis if we would say, this were only some few rich people, and forget about these guys in a slave society even more, and women had no right to vote and so on. Let's imagine a polis. It's a figure, it's an idea, the polis. We are not speaking about the Greek polis. Greece, this is long over. It was a certain cultural context, it was a certain cultural ecosystem with all its flaws in our today's understanding. When we are speaking, and the today's understanding is important, when we are speaking about dialogue and democracy, we always are speaking about our assumptions about the human condition, how a human condition should look like. And you can imagine a polis where the men and women have equal rights, and where there are no slavery, even not in the today's form of slavery. We have also forms of slavery in the neoliberal capitalism, of course. Imagine that the citizens, in this sense of equal rights, of equal human rights, have the right to vote, have the right to take certain jobs for their community, no matter where they are coming from originally. And this has been also practiced. And it's not about a Greek polis with its benefits and flaws. It's about the idea of the polis. If we say a polis is a kind of community, it's a synonym, it's an assumption. let's say, for us today, the Polis is a kind of community. How a good community should look like and what the hell this has to do with the dialogue in true sense as a premise for a true community, no matter how this community looks like in the concrete case. Huh? And this could be a starting point, as not to get misled by this Polis concept. Of course, you are right in large parts. It's not an ideal utopia in the Polis, not at all. No, sure not. But we can take the idea and say, okay, let's transform these ideas in a positive utopian move to our situation today. Today we are slaves, to make it bluntly, a bit provocative. Today we are slaves of a neoliberal agenda. We are bound to have a human condition, a conditio humana, primarily as a consumer. Hey, this is a form of slavery, if you want. And so on and so on. And the point is what we can take, and this is our understanding of dialogue today, to be found out, what we can make today to form a community we can imagine as positive. And how a dialogue today should look like, if a dialogue is a premise for a true community. This is an assumption. And how a dialogue today could look like as a premise for a good community, as a eudaimonia translated into good living. And this is very rich in premises. As what we and I deliberately want to use these Greek terms. What is our understanding, our personal logos about good living in fragmented societies with no common ethos? What it is? No, Norina, it's okay.
I mean, I think somebody wanted to go. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add something because you were mentioning voting. First of all, I was now thinking about, is voting actually also a form of dialogue in some way? And then also I was thinking about another precondition might be knowledge, because if I'm voting and I do not know what I'm voting for, then so if voting is considered a dialogue, then there's no dialogue. And I had once a discussion with someone who is denying climate breakdown. And he was using arguments that I could not argue against, because somehow I was lacking the arguments to argue against somehow, or to even set up a dialogue in the first place. So I feel like knowledge is also a big part of it.
Okay.
But in that
I
point,
just
though,
finished
we're
out
talking
your
about
point.
voting. I mean, if voting is a democratic function in today's society, and you take the American model of a two-party system, if you can't vote for either party because they're not what you believe in, are you really being dealt with in a democratic manner, or are you being dealt with in an oligarchical democratic manner where you're basically under the control of certain groups that control those parties? So basically, I think you want to have a dialogue when you vote, but if you can't find who you want to vote for because the conceptualization that they're presenting isn't your conceptualization, I think you're alienating people from the democratic process. And I think the problem is how to solve that. And also, human rights, of course, is really, really important in all this aspect, as you stated before. But I mean, are we now at the high point in our society today, where we see the world today, where human rights are at the high point of where they'll ever be, and we'll start seeing a demolishment of human rights based on the failure of the democratic system not being able to service the people?
Yeah, this is a very important.
That's a good
That's a very
point.
good point. Yeah.
Okay. I just noted that.
And the concept that explained here, the non-equal knowledge that the parts of the dialogue they have, it's an important point of the dialogue that will not be happen. And but if the two sides of the dialogue respect to the background of the dialogue concept, that we are living inside no darkness. We are,
Okay.
we are living inside a situation that the whole of the information is not in my hand. Yes, my knowledge is not equal with your knowledge, and we will share our information. And if I respect your knowledge and I respect your logos, then you can share yourself. It's not a game that the one side of the dialogue should be win of this game.
Mhm.
It's a process of changing information and exchanging information. And this is the points that you told now. It's important political points, but we are trying to speak about the concept of dialogue between the people from the surface size, not the high level side of this concept. And after that, for example, how we can explain the meaning of the dialogue between ourselves without refer to the governments. Okay, we would like now forget the government, and then we would like explain the meaning of dialogue, how the citizenships can find their situation in their relationship. For example, between the friends, between the people who are living in the community, and anything like this. And if we will find a solution in this concept, maybe it will be useful for the relationship between the citizenship and government and citizenship. And then the biggest dialogue, it will be started, and I think.
That's a good line. And coming into your point, to your both points. No?
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, and this is a question until today, and has been a question in all the search for utopia, at least in the West. No? It needs a small community to be a good community, a limited number of people, and this is not given today. So, second, it needs the avoidance of luxury. This is very, very important. So we do not, for a good community, where the eudaimonia, the satisfactory living for all in the community, is ensured, no matter what I believe else. This is another issue. We have to live together, and then let's look for leading a satisfactory life in our polis. It's about ideas, okay, in our community, and then we have to be open, as in the sense of dialogue, and we have to avoid luxury, and we have to be a limited number of people. I cannot have a polis with 10,000 people. The first investigator of this phenomenon of communities, also Aristoteles, he said, okay, the number of people in a polis should be around 3,600 inhabitants. More, yeah, because, why? Like in medieval Italian town states, for instance, who came relatively close to this polis concept again. I have to know the people in person, at least that I see them once a day. At least, on the street, on the piazza, I have an idea who it is, and we meet in the ecclesia, in the assembly, and in the agora. So we meet on the place, also where we discuss and speak, and we meet us in formal terms in the ecclesia, in the major assemblies of all the citizens voting for something, and then we know, okay, so here the people are here, and they are voting. Okay, with 10,000 people, or with a New Delhi consisting of 30 million people, you cannot make this. Which means we have to consider, as a perspective, we have to consider to decentralize our today's systems again into smaller communities. It's the end of
But
the
it's-
idea of
it's-
the
it's
state
like
as
the
we know
problem
it.
of the internet that we have all the perspectives of all the people
Yeah,
in
yeah,
one
yeah.
place.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem.
And this is a
But I
point.
think,
Yeah?
Alan
Yeah,
was,
please, please, please.
very long. You wanted
Yeah.
to say something?
Ellen?
Alan?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the whole concept of like to be a citizen, okay, to be able to participate in a dialogue, the baseline starts with being a citizen, okay? What does it mean to be a citizen? To be a citizen in the classical Greek sense, to be a citizen meant you had a responsibility to participate, to take part in a dialogue, so that there was like an assumption that there were certain shared values that was part of the baseline, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And if you were not a citizen, then you didn't have those values, okay? And this is very important in terms of like the concept of the polis. The concept of the polis means the concept of citizenship, which can exist in different places, okay?
Yeah, this is a very important point indeed, because if we take this concept of citizenship in your sense as an idea, as we outlined it ideas also in a positive meaning as an ideal, a premise is citizenship, and then another premise, your example of the human rights. Another premise is a common value system, as we would say today. So we would have some basic common values we agree upon, even if it's not outspoken. So imagine you live in positive terms. Imagine you live in an Italian town state like Siena, and imagine Siena would be a real democracy, and we the citizens can vote. And then we need some common values and some common ethos. Otherwise, we cannot build a polis. We just would fall apart.
I think about dialogue and politics. On 9th of June, we have votings for the parliament of the city of Karlsruhe. And since 5 days, you see a lot of faces at the streets, and you don't know what is this person thinking about community and such things. And I don't know which person I vote. Perhaps the face looks like nice, perhaps the other not, and so the looks like nice face, I give her 1 point. And at the votings you have to give 48 points. And I think it should be necessary that the voted persons have a citizen hour for dialogues. During the 5 years they are voted, to give citizens the chance to understand why they are working in this kind and why they are thinking about a theme in this kind. And this could be a chance to come in a better way together.
This is a good. It's a good point in a practical aspect, and it's a good point in terms of the discussions we had so far. Because, as Alan had it, in the essence, it's about citizenship, and one basic element for citizenship is amongst others a common value system. We need a common ethos also in concrete behavior. So we must be active, we must be actively voting, actively participating, and the common value system is important. If I do not believe in human rights, we have no common values. And in strict terms, and then we could not be citizens of the same city. This is, yeah, it's a tricky issue.
Yeah, but the citizens are now, you said the communities which are too big cannot be the polis. And now we have the problem that we are not every day, we are not seeing each other every day and going to the same place in the middle of the city for voting, for meeting.
Yeah.
And we do that now with everyone else in the whole world at the same place. And so many different things are mixing there, and this is such a huge problem.
It's a huge problem, and it's a big obstacle, and
Yes.
and it again relates to the question of the human condition. In the meaning of the relation between polis, democracy, and dialogue, the human condition is that of a citizen of a relatively small group, as a relatively permanent social small group. We can achieve this via many ways. Also, we do not have to live in the same city, but it is a problem as regards the lifestyle and our perception of life. Na? Das macht ja was mit uns, wenn wir in modernen Kontexten leben. And then we have no feeling, and we have no attitude for belongingness to a certain city, for instance, or to a certain community, because I can change my communities in social media, for instance. But then, and this is a point I want explicitly to come later on it, also on these obstacles, because here we are in modernity, and in modernity we are since plus minus 300 years meanwhile, and modernity means the dissolution of social bondings, which is one premise for a citizenship in the polis sense or in the utopian sense of making a good community, let's call it good community, with all the hopes and utopias behind it. And yeah, it's a good point. And this point we have to address. But the premise, again, is the dialogue, one premise. And this was our starting point now. What is your idea about a dialogue? How a dialogue could look like today? We are speaking via distance, for instance. Is this true dialogue possible when speaking via distance? It's a question. I don't know. Or do we have to be sitting here in order to have a real dialogue? They have to see us, anthropology, interact. It's a question.
I don't know, I think with the digitalization, like what we're doing here, we have a communication with people. I mean, I listen to Alan and I listen to Alan's point, and it makes sense to me, and I absorb that point. And it's a good point. But I think, for instance, I mean, we are here in Germany, and if I walk across the city at any given time, I see 250 people walking across a park, and they're all looking at their cell phones, talking into their cell phones, reading their cell phones. And if you say hello to them, they just ignore you because they're totally stuck on the screen while they're walking, while they're pushing their children in a crib, whether they're walking their dogs. And I basically think what happens is you get the cell phone and the digital world becoming your community. So you really don't have a community of social communication. You have a digital communication, and your community is your digital world. That's basically what it is.
What do you think about it? Is the end of dialogue or a new form of dialogue?
Is this a new citizenship?
Please. Yeah, go on.
I know exactly what he's talking about in terms of like walking on the street and seeing people with their face stuck to their smartphones, okay? But on the other hand, the point Uli made it earlier about when Aristotle was talking about the size of the city, okay? The size of the community, okay? How we can imagine a community of 10 million people. What does a community look like with 10 million people? It's not a community, okay? It's something else. It's a megalopolis, okay? And citizenship is related to the size of the community because citizenship relates to the idea that we can share knowledge on a certain level within a certain space. So in the Greek formula or in the Greek model, okay, the agora becomes a central space because the agora is a place where knowledge can be shared.
Exactly.
And this is very important.
It's very important, and maybe some people have this question that okay, when you divided the people, the population of the people who are living in the city, divided to 3,000, for example, the groups that divided to 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, what happened between them? And I used this example, the fractals example. I think when we are speaking about the style of the police and the member of the police, we are speaking about the style of fractals. Fractals divided to many parts. That the small parts, the shape of small parts is the shape of is like the shape of whole of the matter, all of the thing, all of the anything that you can see the picture of the fractals. And these 3,000, these 5,000 people, they are working with each other, they are finding each other, finding out each other, and they can vote better than they are living in a 200,000 community member, the community that has a 200,000 members. This system is working better than this. And the police, when we are speaking about the ancient Greek words, and as I inferred before, that as I told before, we are not speaking about just one word. We are speaking about the whole of cosmological words. That whole of these words and all of these words work with each other. Polis work with logos. Logos work with ethos, pathos, logos, and then all of them need the eidos, need the theoria, and these kind of words work with each other and will create a situation of concept that then after that, therefore, we can use this. And we are trying to prepare a concept that came from these many different words and many different ancient Greek words.
The interesting, as very short, the interesting point is also the relationship between certain inner images or ideas. No? And all these ideas form a Gestalt, they form a whole. I must have a pre-understanding to be a citizen and to be, Ellen's point, a responsible citizen. Norina's point, it's a question of knowledge, right? No? Daniela's point, it's a question of a baseline, and the baseline are first of all common values. If you have no common values, yeah, okay, and then the idea of building up a community is over, no matter how it looks like. Again, this is the second point. And we have to meet certain premises in order to be a good citizen, even if it could be possible to build it up in a fractal way. So this is a very interesting approach as regards recent large mass society, mass in terms of numbers, of technologies, of products, a new definition of mass after classical modernity. And fractals, okay, could be a pathway to making how to build a true community as a provided we want that. How to build a true community, it could not become completely meaningless and utopian in the negative sense with fractals. Okay. First of all, in cases like India, cultural ecosystems where Gurpreet is living, It's with many, many people, but on the other hand, with strong local traditions, strong local communities. And then it doesn't matter if our megalopolis has 30 million inhabitants or not. Yeah? These are not Western isolated small consuming individuals. You know, this is a different thing. And this we have also to consider. Okay, is it obsolete to speak about a dialogue today or not? Is it utopian? Even an illusion?
You are mad.
Hmm?
You are mad.
Perhaps.
It's a joke, yeah.
Man sieht immer, glaube ich, nicht so gut, wenn sich jemand meldet. Die Leute müssen, glaube ich, einfach nur rausreden.
Redet
Sonst kommt man
einfach.
nicht.
Redet einfach.
I think it's actually quite interesting because you were asking us whether a true dialogue is possible, but like even that I can raise my hand and that there is a form of moderation is also already part of it. And I feel that, so I work as an artist and I work a lot with new technologies and I think a lot about bots and like non-human participants on the internet or like memes, and they all form communities as well. They are either human or non-human, but they have a human background and so on and so on. And I feel like, for example, with memes, it's quite interesting because the participants, they do not talk to each other. But they form a community without even talking through ideas, through a shared sense of a cultural sphere, for example. I feel like that new platforms, they can provide, if they provide these three parts, ethos, logos, and pathos, if they give us the possibility to exchange on these levels, then they're totally valuable. How do you say, viable? Because I was also doing a workshop with young adults on parliaments, and we were creating virtual parliaments. And I was wondering we were questioning, like, what is the role of the human body, for example, the physical presence of the body within a dialogue, and how do we make decisions in the virtual space? And it was also about forms of communication. So, for example, is chattering more informal forms of communication that we actually think are not forms of communication that we value as part of a serious dialogue? Do they still contribute to a dialogue, or emojis or GIFs or other means of communication that we now, for example, have in the internet? How would that change within, for example, a political debate that we have and so on? And yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to explore, I think, and it has a lot of potentials. I do not see it only as something that's very negative and limiting, but it has downsides, of course, because there are corporations involved and so on and so on.
This is the background, but due to the complexity of the overall theme, community, polis, the dialogue, democracy, you know, we plan to make a series of workshops, and not only on Greek polis. No? Be assured, no? This is just the starting point. And you posed a good question, a bit provocant. These Greek concepts, there might be assumption, there might be still an anthropological need, or at least a human hope, or an utopian desire that we could behave in this very direct way. But question, are these Greek concepts not obsolete today? Didn't we found other new ways of making true dialogue in completely new ways and new settings? Also the examples you mentioned. Here we have as a pathos. It's a question, just a question, please.
Yeah, I think maybe a huge part of the problem is that earlier we had to deal with everyone in our society, in our community, whether we like it or not, or go somewhere else. and we had to deal with different opinions and with different forms of life and values,
Yeah.
for example. And now people, they don't make even an effort anymore to understand each other. They just look for new communities through the internet, through the new forms of communication. So they find people who have exactly the same mindset, and so we have unlearned to deal with someone. Like when you, I don't know, visit an old friend or someone from another generation or someone who has another political opinion, it's no problem to have a dialogue, but you have to make an effort to understand and to listen to each other, and not to just look for someone who has the exact same opinion, and then you are in this echo chamber of similar opinions.
I think that this is an important point too. On the one hand, there might be new forms of dialogue in a positive sense. No? But what means true dialogue? No? True dialogue means I have to stand the pure fact that the other has not my opinion. No? And this relates again also to the diversity issue mentioned in the beginning. No? Real democracy means diversity of people, and what is a diversity in the end? When I meet the people, no? I have to stand them. Huh? When I speak to them, your example, I speak with a guy who does not believe in climate change. You think, what? Yeah, but here the guy is, and I have to stand it at least for a while in order to start a true dialogue. This is the other opinion, and I have not to run away, which means related to our recent living conditions, as it is technologically assisted living conditions. We perhaps at the same time we relearn many things in the direction of new possibilities for dialogue, a technically assisted meanings, and in parallel and on the other hand, we de-learn, we forget about it because we can run away. We have not to stand it. And true dialogue means we have to stand it, we have to exchange our opinion. And this was also the essential for citizenship. I have to, when I as a citizen have to make a dialogue with my citizen companions, I have to stand their different opinions. Even if I think when the dialogue is starting, oh my God, how people can think like this. This is incredible. This is not my thing. It's not my ethos. It's not my logos translated in these terms. But I have to stand it. I have to speak with them. And I cannot run away. And I think this running away is a very big issue. It has to be readdressed, because at large parts the social media are not social, not really social, because they invite for evasion. And if all the people think the same in my bubble, and this is also the end of diversity, and hence our assumption, the end of democracy, because the assumption was democracy needs diversity. So here we have it. And then we are speaking only with equals about the same things. And this would be the dream of every dictator. All the people are the same. These dystopian constructions. This is as a beginning with Leninism and ending with some science fiction construction where all the people are the same. Also the same consume idiots, the same, and so on, the same. As a sameness and dialogue are no friends. On the other hand, we need a baseline, this common ethos. And the citizenship, what Ellen mentioned, the baseline here is also a common ethos. We need to be ready to take over responsibility for our community, for instance, in making certain jobs. I cannot evade. I'm no privates in Greek terms. A private is a purely private person. This was called the human idiot. was an idiot because he did not participate in the affairs of the Polis. He was purely private. and then he was irrelevant for the Polis. He played no role because he was completely private. Okay, he's an idiot. She is an idiot. Fine. Also this means private person consequently. Okay, and here we have the fields. May I make a proposal? We can have a short break